Well, good morning, everybody. I appreciate you joining us today. As I said earlier, if you have not gotten the link to view the introductory video to this session, please let us know so we can get you a copy of it. I'm recording this session too, and after we're done and it populates correctly, then I'll send the link to Jim so he can forward it on to everybody else. Because I know sometimes it's hard to take notes when you're listening to a Zoom call. So you'll have this PowerPoint so that you can go back to any part of the section that you wanted to. Um, so let me get right to it. This section is today is on questioning strategies. Can questions really be the answer? And then how to talk money, how to talk budget. So that is our step. If you remember from the first slide, the program that we have is called the step up system of selling. Size up the situation. Who is this person? How do they process information? How do you do an upfront contract? Sizing up the situation first. Then T, take them to their pain. What is the pain that this person has that we are uniquely positioned to solve? Extend that pain in the future, saying maybe meaning like, well, what if this client doesn't do anything? What's their situation a year from now? Or what if they did? What do we solve that they can look forward to in the future? And then P, propose a solution. So today we'll spend a little bit more time on toward the end of the presentation talking about questioning strategies. So I believe what really separates great salespeople from good salespeople is the ability to ask the difficult questions. You know, when I do a training on what's called the behavior, attitude, and techniques under the behavior, we talk about having goals, having a plan, but having the guts, discipline, and vitality to put that plan into action. And when I talk about guts, discipline, and vitality, many salespeople don't have the ability to ask the difficult questions like some of you do. You know, it's amazing to me the number of salespeople that can do a presentation, but they can't close because they don't even ask for the order. And I want you to remember this: you're judged more by the questions that you ask than the answers that you give. Our job at the beginning is really to get information. The old line, information is power, is so true. The more information you have, the more power you have. And if you remember the part we talked in the last video about upfront contract, in the upfront contract, we'll say things to the client like, hey, I know I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I hope that doesn't become offensive. I'm probably going to ask you a lot more questions than my competitors because I didn't come here with a one size fits all, trying to a preconceived notion of what I want to sell you. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I hope that's okay. The rule is people can't get mad at you for doing something they gave you permission to do. So get permission to ask questions that we're going to really, this is a discovery process. So I need to ask you a lot of a questions. So you should be doing 70 or the client should be doing 70% of talking because of the 30% of the questions that you ask them. So typical selling strategy, though, is find someone who might ever so slightly have an interest in what we do, sell, offer, promote, beg for an appointment. Oh, I'm just going to be in your area anyway. Can I just stop by? Show up and throw up anything you know about the product or service. Find clever ways to cram as much features and benefits as you can into your prospect. And that's what typical salespeople do. You know, keep talking fast enough, loud enough, and engaging enough to keep that prospect off balance long enough, and repeat this cycle above and above for every prospect that you see. And then a lot of people are spending a lot of time chasing. So we talk about the buyer seller dance. Remember, the buyer system, the first thing they do is they mislead about their true intentions. It is a natural defense mechanism for them to mislead because they're afraid, oh, this person's going to try and sell me something. So if I really tell this person how bad my problem is, boy, they'll try and sell me something and I lose leverage. So buyers aren't bad people. They've just been conditioned to try and mislead about their true intentions. And then they try and steal as much information from you. They want to be an educated consumer. They want you to tell them everything so that maybe they, in their third step, they can use that information to go beat up their current supplier on price or become an educated consumer to go to somebody else. So while they're misleading, they're trying to steal your information, and then they're committing to nothing, the dreaded TIO. The sales guys out there pitching benefits and features, trying to close, and then chase. So that's why we call it the buyer seller dance. So what we talk about is the step up system, having a systematic approach to selling. There's a lot of great salespeople out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of them on the phone right now or on this call. But what happens if I ask most salespeople to describe for me on like a vanity license plate what your selling system is? Most of them can't. They don't have a systematic approach. So remember that, size up the situation, take them to the pain, extend the pain in the future, propose a solution, utilize your closing skills to get the order. And then the last P is propose a commitment. So again, that's what we're trying to make sure that you do. First of all, size up that situation. That's bonding rapport and an upfront agreement. Then take them to their pain. Obviously, no pain, no sale. Extend the pain in the future. We'll talk about the consequences of not changing, not buying your product or service. And then propose a solution after knowing the budget and decision process that this client prospect will go through. Then again, utilize your closing skills and provide a commitment to them. That is the system that we're teaching. And if you watch both of these videos back to back, the one we already produced and this one, it'll give you a better idea of how and when to use these different steps. So again, sizing up the situation, you need that strong sense of who you are, that understanding of understanding the person around you. And most of you that are successful in sales, it's because you already have that ability to bond and rapport. Remember, rapport is the French word for come together. So people buy from people they like and they trust, and people like and trust people like themselves. And no salespeople have argued with me in the 17 years I've been a sales trainer with that. People buy from people they like and they trust, and people like and trust people like themselves. But yet, most salespeople don't spend very much time every month sharpening their axe, getting better at their bond and rapport skills, and trying to find out who is this person. Let's bond with them first before I try and sell them anything. And you need to have that finely tuned emotional situation awareness and radar to quickly and accurately read that prospect's feeling at each stage of the sales cycle. You need to have a good idea of how to be flexible, how to understand that not every prospect is the same, and how can you adapt to that prospect instead of them trying to adapt to you. You need that professional humility too. It's not um, that whole thing about, finally getting down to business or whatever. But at the beginning, the idea is when you bond with this person and show them a little vulnerability by doing things like interesting questions like, hey, I'm confused. Help me understand. I know why most people would buy from us or why most people would want this. Help me understand why you would want it. Tell me what it is that you're looking for. Ask a lot of questions that show that this person that you're interested in them as a person more than just getting to the point and trying to sell them something. So again, questions help that. I'm confused. Help me understand. At this point, I usually say to a lot of salespeople typically have an inferiority complex. Oh, I'm just a salesperson. And they try and make up for it by being the smartest guy in the room and trying to overwhelm their prospects with benefits and features and knowledge of the product. When really a good salesperson would say something like, hey, I'm not sure if what we've done for hundreds of other contractors fits in your world, as all worlds aren't the same. You mind if you share with me some of the unique challenges and issues that you have first before I start pitching you on my product or service? Actually get into that situation where you don't know. I get a kick out. I get emails every morning from people trying to sell me something in my own business. And they'll start out with, we have the latest, greatest. I'm sure we can help you. And I'm thinking, you know nothing about me. How can you be sure you can help me? So that's why I do a little bit of the standoffish in the question form. Hey, I'm not sure if what we've done for hundreds of other people, it still gives you credibility that you have a lot of clients, but I'm not sure if what we've done for them fits in your world. I'm not sure if the challenges or issues that my last client that I dealt with yesterday has the same challenges issues you have. You mind if we spend a little bit more time talking about what's important to you? And that's what I mean by professional humility, is not just jumping in there saying, I know what you need. Let me convince you what it is that you need. And you need to be able to gain that trust of prospects. If I had the opportunity to really ask everybody the question here, how do you build trust with everybody? I'd get a lot of different answers. But we are trying to be that trusted advisor. And the way you build trust with somebody right away is with disarming honesty. And when I say disarming honesty, what I mean by that is by going to them and saying, hey, I'm not sure if what we do fits in your world. And at any time that you determine there's not a fit, I'm okay with you telling me no. Are you going to be okay telling me no? That's what I mean by disarming honesty is, hey, I don't know if there's a fit. Let me know at any time if you don't want to work with me. My coworker cannot get in the meeting. He's currently experiencing some pain. I can't help that one right now. If the new link that we sent you, I hope will help. And again, when we're done with this, the recording can be sent to people that weren't able to get online. So again, you build trust with people with disarming honesty, and that disarming honesty early in the process is telling somebody it's okay to tell me no. As soon as you decide there's not a fit, I'm okay with you telling me no. Are you going to be okay telling me no? And then you can say to them, and are you okay then if I determine there's not a fit? If what you hope that we can accomplish can't be done at the price that you're expecting, are you going to be okay with me telling you no? That's how you build trust with somebody early, showing them where the exit ramp is. Now, remember, we're using their system against them. Remember, their system is they mislead about their true intentions. Second thing they want to do is they want to steal your free consulting. So when you go early in the process and say, it's okay to tell me no, they won't tell you no because they still want to steal your free information and get all the become an educated consumer. But it does change the whole dynamics of the meeting if early in the process you show them where the exit ramp is. So again, here's an example. And that's why I want you to have this video when we're done so you can go back to these questions and try and fit them into your own verbiage. After I know a little bit more about your company and what you're trying to achieve, if I don't think there would be the best solution for you, would it be okay maybe if I suggest some other competitors who might be a better fit? Somebody would be shocked that you would do that up front. Now, you don't have to give them a competitors, but by laying the groundwork for it, that saying, hey, if there's not a fit here, I'd be glad to recommend somebody else. It again changes it from a pressure situation where the client's thinking, hey, when are they going to try and sell me something? And how do I tell them no? So I can be sure that we're both on the same page other than price, which is always a very important aspect of what my clients are looking for. What other criteria do you typically use when selecting new suppliers? If I don't believe that we're going to be very effective in those key areas, say your boss's eyes, I'd rather tell you up front than risk any embarrassment for you later. Are you comfortable with that? Always leave it with type of a question. Would that be fair? Does that make sense? Are you comfortable with that? Those are the ways that you can end a statement and still make it a comfortable or a comment that they have to respond to. What we're looking for is affirmation in return from the client instead of you just listing a benefit or feature and it just hang there like a dangling participle. Try and make sure you get into some of these questions that we're using here as early in the process as possible. Watch your time on bond and rapport. Thanks again for the invite. How are things going today? A lot of people start talking, how about that weather? What about the football game? And we start spending a little bit too much time on the bond and rapport. Once you feel that there's a kind of a good connection on there, then you know that you can move forward. But always be nurturing. Remember that nurturing parent voice that we talk about is so appropriate. Would that make sense? Would that be fair? Really stay in your nurturing parent instead of your critical parent state. Critical parent states are things like, oh, you know what your problem is? I know what your problem is. Let me tell you what and you start telling people. Remember the adage, if you're telling, you're not selling. So are you telling or are you asking questions in a nurturing manner? That's how you build trust with somebody also is by that nurturing parent. None of us like that critical salesperson who wants to tell us what our problem is. And be careful when you're doing that. If you need to make a statement about your product or service, again, make sure it's in a very nice tone, very nurturing, and you end with a question. If you need to tell them about, hey, here's the warranty on this thing, it's 2 years, would that make sense? Would that fit in your world? Would that be fair? Always end when you make a statement out there with a required question that they have to respond, whether they affirm your statement and you know what their feelings are about what it is that you laid in front of them. So, the ground rules. Now, remember that upfront contract. The time. Hey, Mr. Prospect, when we set this up, you said we had 45 minutes. Is that still good? And at the end of those 45 minutes, this will be a great meeting. If what is the purpose? What do we need to accomplish for you to say, wow, I'm glad Wayne Dean scheduled this 10 o'clock appointment with me? Anything else on your agenda other than hearing a little bit more about my product or services? Anything else you'd like to talk about? Do you mind if I share with you what I need to talk about? Here's what I need out of today's agenda, so I can even go forward to even talk about whether we want to schedule a demonstration or whether we want to put a proposal together. Can you mind if I share with what I need out of this meeting? And then the potential outcome. When we get done, this is either yes, this makes sense, let's go forward. No, it doesn't make sense. And if it's not a yes and it's not a no, what else could it be, Mr. Prospect? If you actually say that to somebody in the second step, you've bought a report, you're doing the upfront contract. Hey, when we get done in the next hour, if it's not a yes, this makes sense, and it's not a no, you're closing the door. What else could it be? And the person will say, well, I'd like to, I'll probably have to think it over. That makes sense. You need to think it over. But why don't we do that? This. Let's at least, if it's not a yes or no, agree to a clearly defined next step. And a clearly defined next step is I'll call you Tuesday at 10 o'clock. We'll decide to make sense to go forward. Have a specifically defined clear next step. Don't accept these, well, I'll call you in a week or two, or call me back in 4 months. Even if it is that situation, hey, we don't have the budget, we're working on it now, call me in January. Great. January 1st is probably going to be too early. Training second, probably still a little hungover maybe from your party. Why don't we do this? On January 4th at 10 o'clock, I'll call you. Any reason when I call you at 10 o'clock on January 4th, you wouldn't be available? Have a clearly defined next step. And that's one area people always ask me, hey, if I go through your training, can you guarantee success? And I will guarantee that your sales will go up if out of every sales opportunity, you get either a yes, a no, or a clearly defined next step, and stop accepting these nebulous think it overs, call me in a couple of weeks. If that's really what they're saying, call me a couple of weeks, it's what they're really saying is it's a no. And wouldn't you rather get the no early in the process? So, Mark, it sounds to me like it might make sense for you to invite me over so that we're going to have a face-to-face meeting about the new blah, 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 whatever it is. Would that be fair? Is that fair? Invite is a very strong word to use. It's one of these words we focus group that everybody likes an invitation. So when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're at the point where you want to schedule an appointment with them, use that verbiage that, hey, would it make sense for you to invite me in so that we can go over, do a demo, do this or do that? Would that make sense? Would that be fair? That's what I'm talking about with this effective questioning strategies, is really get down to a meeting with somebody and really ask for that opportunity. It works the same with asking for the close too. So Tom, exactly where would be best for us to meet? Let's just agree on our most important items on the agenda first. Would that be fair? Schedule the appointment and then make an agenda for the appointment so that you know what it is that you're going over. Just so we make sure that we're both on the same page, let's agree that the next steps might look like this if we're a good fit. Are you comfortable with that? So again, I'm going to send you the video so that you can come back and take these snips and write these down if you don't have time now, or you're in your car, or you're listening on the phone. Experience tells me that we'll be able to figure out in maybe 10 to 15 minutes whether or not there's a good fit. And if we're still talking after about 40 minutes, that probably means that we'll want to go to the next step in the process. Would that sound fair? Are you planning to invite any others to this meeting? Who else should be in attendance? Get those decision makers there. This is really a good questioning statement to use for somebody to make sure you're getting that meeting and you really know the meat and potatoes of what it's going to be about. Typically find that the best way for our meeting to go would be to ask for a whole bunch of questions around the issues, try and see the business side through your eyes. Are you okay with that? Again, what this one is leading to is people can't get mad at you for asking a lot of questions if you set it up for them and tell them you're going to do that. So again, finish with that upfront contract. Is there any else to think about that we need to add the agenda? You seldom would go into a major meeting with the board of directors without an agenda. So we should have agendas, and whether you write them down or not in front of the client, I typically do. When I'm meeting with a client for the first time and I do the upfront contract, I always start, you mind if I take notes? And they always go, oh yeah, great. And I start taking notes. So what's the overall objective? And I write it down. This will be a great meeting if what? I usually use that line and say something like, this will be a great meeting of what? Or When we get done, how would you want this meeting to end? Because that's really what you want to cover up front is what are we going to cover in this meeting so that we're not going off on tangents. I'll ask some salespeople when I've got a group like this in a live meeting. I'll ask anyway, raise your hand if you've got a meeting scheduled with somebody in the next couple of days. And several people raise their hand. And I'll say, what are you going there for? And well, I'm going there to close them. What do they think you're coming there for? To give them information. So typically we're not on the same page sometimes because we didn't do an agenda with the clients as to what it is that we really want to cover. So now you take them to the pain. The pain is the gap is from where the people are, where that person is, and where they want to be. That's the gap. And your product or service kind of fulfills that gap. So that's where we start really asking that question about pain. Now, we don't use the word pain, reasons to do business, challenges, issues, those kind of things, what it is that that person is trying to have us fix and resolve. But if you don't know what the real pain is, you're really pitching to the wrong problems typically. So get them talking. Tell me a little bit more about what you have experienced, why we're even talking right now. What's the one thing you wish was better than what's one thing you wish your current supplier could do that they aren't doing? What is it that we should to talk to? What do you wish they could do that they haven't been able to do for you? And that goes back to the pain funnel on the previous recording that we did. So memorize that pain funnel. The pain funnel, tell me more. I need some more information. I need some examples. How long has this been a problem? What have you done to fix this problem? Did that work? How much you think this problem has cost you in lost opportunities or revenues, threat business over the next few months? Remember, once you get the pain, you have to quantify the pain. If this person has lost $200,000-$300,000 in business because they didn't have the right equipment to be able to bid for that job, that's real pain. And now you've quantified the pain. And if you think about, and how long has this been going on that you haven't had the right equipment? Oh, 2 or 3 years. And you said this was $100,000 problem? Yeah, well, over 3 years. So it's really a $300,000 problem. Yeah, I guess so. Now your price, when you start talking about price of your product, doesn't seem so bad or out of line if you got them to quantify the pain. So again, the consequences of not doing business or the consequences if you do solve their problem. We need to get to the personal pain. There's 3 levels of pain. People usually give you the surface pain. Well, we're always looking for a better product. Great. Then the business pain. Yeah, because we haven't been able to do this job, or this job as effectively because we didn't have the right equipment. Yeah, but how did that affect you? What's the consequence of this personally affecting you? That the last camera system you bought, your people weren't properly trained. How does that affect you? Oh, now everybody's coming to me. The job gets slowed down because they don't know how to use the equipment. We're not speedy enough. There's always personal pain involved. And that's what you need to get to that a lot of salespeople skip. They hear the business pain and then they try and solve it. Get to the personal problem. You know, now you have the chance to talk about money. When we talk about pain, the pain is so important. And I want you to think about this. You get to leave the pain step and go on to the money step as soon as you know that this person is personally involved, in this situation. Then when you know that you know what the personal pain is, now you can talk about the money. And when I talk about the money here, I'm talking about not what your price is. I'm talking about the client's expectations. It doesn't matter what you charge for your product or service. It matters what the client expects to pay. And that's what we're trying to find out first. And their expectation might be completely off from what it is it's going to end up costing them in the wrong. But we have to start with what their expectation is, because they have to be willing and able to spend the money to fix the pain, to fill the terms of the contract because they like you. So what I did is just I went backwards on the system. Is this client willing and able to spend the money that it's going to take to fix this problem, to fulfill the terms of the agreement we already set up front, a yes, no, or a clearly defined next step? And are they willing to share this with you because they like you? None of these steps work if you didn't do an effective bonding and report step. But I want you to think about it this way. We take this client from well to hurt to sick to critical. They'll write a blank check. I mean, if we just talk a little bit about, well, I'm always looking for, looking to hear about other new technology. So tell me what you have. And you start doing a demo, you know what? Not enough reason to, pull the trigger to buy. But if you start asking questions that get them, yeah, this hurts a little bit that we don't have the, boy, this is really sickening that we don't have, man, it's critical that we do something. If you as a salesperson take them from well to hurt to sick to critical, they're going to spend more money with you. If you get to the point where all of a sudden they balk about the money because you didn't do an effective pain step. So again, we have to talk about what kind of investment is the client willing to make in this project. To use a hotel analogy, if you were expecting this to make 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5 star investment, help me understand what type of investment would you make in this? Will you share with me the sort of range where you think this budget might start? And then we can go up from there in your past experiences on projects like this, Sam. These are the questions that you have to start asking in the pain step instead of you volunteering up front what the cost is. We got to get an idea what the client's expectations are. And it works like this: pain, pain, pain. So this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. Yes, it is. Do you have a budget set aside to fix these problems? Now you're going to get one of three answers. Yes, I got a budget. No, I don't have a budget. Yes, I have a budget, but I'm not going to share it with you. Those are the only three answers to the question. I don't suppose you have a budget set aside to fix these problems. If the client says no, that's not unusual. How do you plan on moving forward? Because even though the client might not know what you charge for your product or service, they know what they wouldn't spend. And that's what we're trying to get an idea. So when somebody says, no, I have no idea what this is going to cost. Do you think it's $1 million? No. Do you think it's $100? No. Then they do have some idea. We're just trying to get them to give us the idea of what their expectations are so that they don't get sticker shock when we don't talk about their expectations. Then we throw out a $300,000 project. Oh my God, that was more than I was thinking. Let's find out what they were thinking first so that we can have that conversation about where that money came from. You know what? If you ask the question, hey, do you have money set aside to fix this? The yes, the no, yes, but I'm not going to tell you. If they say yes, it's kind of like this. Do you have a budget set aside for this, Dan? Yes, I do. You mind sharing that with me in round numbers? Now, this is a situation where I want you to go against your fourth grade teacher who told you not to plagiarize. Yes, use this line exactly. Would you mind sharing with me in round numbers? Share doesn't sound, we're all taught to share, and round numbers isn't threatening. So that's what I want you to do is do that situation where you're saying, do you mind sharing with me in round numbers? And the prospect's going somewhere between 500,000 or 500,000. Whatever number they give you, your response is that could be a problem. Let me tell you why. Because the number the client gives you typically, according to research, is 30% less than what they really have. They're holding back some of that. It's kind of like if you go on a car lot to buy a car and you got 20,000 in your pocket cash, you don't tell the salesman you got 20,000, you tell them I have 15 so that you got some room later on to negotiate. So any number the client gives you, you say that could be a problem. And they go, well, why? What do you mean? Well, let's suppose you want to go first class, you want all the bells and whistles, and instead of the $50,000 budget you just gave me, it ends up being 55,000. Would we be done? Or, well, again, going back to that slide, if the client's critical, they'll find the money. So we always want to get them to try and up the number because the first number they give us is typically not the right number. So once we have an understanding of their budget expectations, you can move on. But I want to go back to the slide where we've got the three different answers. Do you mind, telling me what you have set aside for this? No, I don't have a budget. How'd you plan on moving forward? You can do what's called bracketing at this point. You mind sharing me from the lowest you think this can get done and still have a representative good product to the Taj Mahal? You mind sharing with me that bracket? If they won't bracket, then you bracket. And the bracket is, well, we've been able to sell equipment from this price to this price. Where did you really expect to be on that range? There's always a way to get their expectation. And we're not trying to negotiate the final number here. What we're trying to do is just understand what their expectation is. So when you come back in the fulfillment, you might say to them, you know what? I was able to put together some numbers. I was able to come up with some solutions. I'm going to propose to you some equipment ideas of what I think we can do to solve the problem you told me about. But before they do that, I've got a problem. And they, what do you mean? Well, to be able to do all the things you asked me to do, I'm not going to be able to do it at that price you gave me. So before I even show you any of these things that I need to know, would you up your budget? Would you spend more? Because why should I show it to you if you wouldn't spend it anyway? It gives you the opportunity to adjust and negotiate later. But we can't start negotiating until we know their point, and we need to know their walkaway point. In the session I do on negotiating, the first thing I teach people is, as a negotiator, you always need to know what your walkaway point is, what your final number would be before you wouldn't sell it. Let's find out what their walkaway point and see how close those are together. So that's how you talk about the budget step. Yes, we already talked about, yes, I have a budget. You mind sharing them with me in round numbers, 50,000, suppose that's not enough. And then the third one, yes, but I'm not going to tell you. Now, you'll run into that situation, and I know many of you do, in a situation where it has to be competitively bid. And typically what I say when somebody says, yes, I have a number, but I don't want to share that with you. Well, there's usually two reasons. One, it's a trust issue. You're afraid that if you tell me your budget's 100,000, but I would have done it for 75, I'll just raise my price up to 99,000. Is that what's going on here? You know what? If you don't trust me to give you a fair and reasonable price, then why would you even trust us to do a fair and reasonable job for you? Why don't I do this? I'll promise I'll give you the fair and reasonable price without inflating it, if you'll help me and give me a fair and reasonable budget that you'll work with. It's kind of like the knock knock jokes. You start. So we want to get their number first. So typically, if they do have a budget, but they don't want to share it with you, it's a trust issue. You might as well address it now. There is that situation where, yes, I have a budget, but we can't tell you. We're looking for three bids. We're not able to tell people what our budget is. What you're asking me to do is kind of like bowl. You're asking me to roll the ball down the aisle and try and hit all the 10 pins, but halfway down the aisle, a curtain comes down to the floor length. So the ball can go under the curtain, but I can't see whether it hit anything. So you sure you can't at least give me a range that I can work with? You need to do your best job in the budget step, finding out what the client expectations are. And again, don't get confused when we talk about the budget step being right after paying as our final negotiation step. That's in the fulfillment step, when you're back there fulfilling, is we give our price. But at the beginning, we're just trying to get an expectation of what it is that the client wants to spend money on. All right. So then the next step is decision. What I'm going to do is the decision step we didn't have on the agenda for today, and I've gone over my time. The presentation you're going to get from me is going to include the steps on how to go through the decisions, how to ask the right questions in the decision, so that you can come back to this and look at it as far as disqualifying somebody if they can't make a decision to spend the money to fix the pain, and then how to get into fulfillment. So again, the steps are bond report, upfront contract, pain, budget, decision, fulfillment, and then post-sell. But we don't do fulfillment until we know, can this person spend the money to fix the pain, to fulfill the terms of the contract because they like you. So that's the presentation for today. If you watch both of the audios, I think you'll be, get a good idea of what it is that we do. So is there anybody want to put anything in the chat box? Any questions you have? Any comments from Boris or Adam or any of the other people? No? Boris, anything you want to close with or say or anything? Derek, Wes, any of you guys?
Well, I appreciate you putting the training together, and I appreciate everyone joining. And I know if we utilize the tools, and things will go forward. So I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for taking their time to be part of this training.
Well, some things you got to remember is this is usually a 2-day full boot camp that I do. So it's hard to do it all in just a couple of hours. So
right. I appreciate you condensing it down, even with the video as well.
So what I'm going to do is, in the chat box, I put my personal email in there, and I'll put my personal phone number in here also. 2865665. I put that in there so that you guys can call me at any time. If any of you, feel free, of the 45 people on here, at any time you go through this and you want more explanation, you want more one-on-one, not an issue. Call me and say, hey, Wayne, I was confused when you did this part, or I want to talk more about getting pain, or I have this issue. You guys can reach out to me for free for questions, clarifications, or any other statements. Feel free to do that. All right, I'll close out the recording now, but I'll hang on here if there's anybody else that wants to ask a question without the recording going on. So I've stopped the recording.